But I think that, I'm just saying the video, and I think that we lucked up on being the most diverse city.
We aren't the most diverse. There are many cities.
No, but I mean, we lucked up on being the most diverse. When I mean we lucked up is that there was some population, there was some demographic trends that happened. That was the immigrant groups that moved into the Gulfston area that just happened for the resettlement and the organizations that were active there. So what I'm saying is that we benefited from something that we didn't engineer. But the question is, because I'm thinking about what both of you just said, and what Bill said about his son. I want you to think about this in your mind. You are educated, professional people, and moving into the loop was not possible and almost not possible. So what does that mean post-Harvey? I mean, Herman Park, we love it, it's so diverse. Discovery Green, we love it so diverse. But if I don't live in proximity and I can't afford transportation down, then who you see at Herman Park or Discovery Green is going to be very different. I think that we don't really, in our minds, I think there's some sort of disassociation that happens. Because Houston is such a, we can do it, anything's possible. We don't stare reality in the face. We don't see the real challenges, that there is really a chance that this city can look very dramatically different in its public places in 5 to 10 years because we are not putting together policies that make sure we have economic integration in the very core of the city.
Will you come on my podcast?
And we've got to get off of this field. When we say inside the loop today, we think Heights and Montrose and River Oaks. We don't think near North Side, East Side, Denver Harbor, 3rd Ward, 5th Ward. We don't think all the way near the ship channel, and they need to look that direction inside the loop, which has access to downtown.
Well, you know near North Side is going.
It's good. I was like, let me be fair, I looked at the neighborhood.
I think people look in those areas, the River Oaks, the Montrose, the Heights, because of the schools, because they have better ratings.
Sure.
So that's where the focus is. But I think a lot of young people who don't have kids are looking on the east side or the south side more.
And let's make those other schools better.
Well, and I would say, to that point, when I told people I was buying a house off Leland, people would say, where? And I would say, Eastwood, Greater Eastwood. And they would say, oh, are you still inside the loop? And I'm like, oh, I'm inside the first half of the loop. And so, they literally don't think that there are neighborhoods with that proximity that are affordable. I mean, it was still more than I wanted to pay, let's be real. But yeah.
So tell us about getting younger people, these millennials that are looking at Houston. How
I called them all.
can we engage them? How can we keep them? How can we let them be decision makers of our city? Because they would make a different decision than a wealthier white person who's 52 years old would make.
That's right. So Mayor Turner is good about talking about diversity and talking about inclusion and the difference between the two, right? That inclusion is intentional. And so we certainly talk about more than just, traditional, when we think about how diverse is the board of directors, we talk about how many council districts of the city and neighborhoods are represented. And we talk about, are there members of the next generation, is what Mayor Turner always said. And he believes that it's as much to train those millennials in how to have these conversations and how to participate as it is that we're not trying to take other people off the boards, but we need those people to learn how to ask questions and speak up because their concerns are different, right? They're carrying a lot of student debt and they're trying to figure out how to live in this awesome diverse city, but how do they live there and get downtown for all the things that we want them to do without being priced out. So what we do when we look at a board for Mayor Turner is we look at both who has applied, right? You can go to the city's website, houstontx.gov/boards, and there's a list of 150 permanent boards and commissions that we're always dealing with. So we can look at anybody that's come and filled out an application or sent me an email with their resume and solicited interest in and some board or commission, and then we also reach out, right? So a lot of times we don't have overwhelming interest in boards that are just doing a lot of hard work for free. So that's when we reach out to council members or wonderful active community heroes like Bill Baldwin and say, who do you know on this side of town that has knowledge in X and that's interested in Y and that knows this is for free? And so it's a combination of, we hope that they're on the website, we hope that they're paying attention to what city government's doing, but also we have to reach out because they might just be trying to get their job in Houston and figure out where to live in Houston. So we have to reach out and say, did you know that there's a tax increment reinvestment zone in your neighborhood making decisions on development in that area? Right. And there are only 5 people on that board of directors voting on that decision, so you may not get that seat on that board, but you can surely be at that meeting and you can ask those questions and you can then come before city council and say, I was at this meeting in my neighborhood and I wasn't thrilled to hear that none of the sidewalks are accessible for my new neighbors. So I now want all 16 council members and my mayor to hear that I would like that to be a priority. So with millennials, we're working on both getting them seats at the table in boards and commissions that have room and that have vacancies and that have terms that are turning over, but we're also encouraging millennials just to start showing up. That there are millennials that either are new to the city or just new to public service or new in their careers. And to Bill's previous point, they can't actually be gone from work every other Thursday for hours and hours and hours for planning commission meetings like Bill Baldwin can. So maybe I can't get them on the commission, but when the commission is deciding on something that's relevant in their neighborhood, they can get to that meeting and listen to what's being decided and ask questions. And so we definitely have a balance of showing up and engaging millennials and helping them figure out how to get them on a board or how to just get them involved with their board.
Is there a website?
Yes, ma'am. It's so HoustonTX.gov is the city's website. Now /boards will take you to the list of boards and commissions. Commissions always working.
In the Department of Neighborhoods, you can find all the super neighborhoods.
That's right.
And even in that list, you can also.
Super neighborhood.
Super neighborhoods is the body, the entity that the city actually interacts with to talk about decisions, and it's also the place where developers are supposed to go, anybody where there's any public-private collaborations happening, the Department of Health comes out, so the city interacts with super neighborhoods, and then super neighborhoods interact with civic associations. So the super neighborhoods, and this is really a great marketing tool for you, really the super neighborhoods have the connections with the civic organizations who actually do the block level work in a community. And then that super neighborhood has a super neighborhood association, which also meets at the city. So the city has organized itself in a way that's beneficial to you. You don't have to go out and find everybody. You should go to a super neighborhood and say, wow, there's only 3 people here. So that means that this community, the engagement is not here, that I may be looking for. And you may want to communicate that to people who are prospective, because people may say, well, are there any civic clubs in this neighborhood? And you from the City of Houston's website, you can find all that out. These are the civic clubs that are active, that participate, and those interact with these super neighborhoods. And so you can learn a lot about a community by going to that super neighborhood. And you can go to the Association of Super Neighborhoods, which meets once a month, to figure out what the city is doing in neighborhoods throughout the entire city.
And those are the great active groups that are often helpful for people like me when the mayor needs a group of qualified individuals with expertise in X. Those are the groups that know in this neighborhood, these are the people interested in that.
It's about geography.
Are there super neighborhoods? Are there tax reinvestments in every one of these super neighborhoods?
No.
So is there a list? That's where I'm
Yes, there's a list.
There is a list of.
There's a list of super neighborhoods, there's a list of the tourists also, Kathleen.
The list for tax reinvestment.
Yeah.
Yep, there's 27 of those.
Yeah, we've done a presentation, but Kathleen
Are
can
they
pull
in
it.
Eastwood?
There's no, you would just have the downtown one that would go to where Compass State
And there's an
is.
east side one, but they're
Yeah.
not like they're.
Where navigation is, my friend Bo Fraga, he's there over there on the east end, they do have one. all those parks and everything tied to navigation, the Esplanade there, Frostrum, that was all
And the
paid for.
city's economic development webpage, I mean, you could type in Google City of Houston Tax Increment Reinvestment Zones, but our economic development page on the city's website will list them all, and you can click and look at the map of where they all begin and end, and
Good. For the 27-year-old.
Yeah. So, Assata, if we could do one thing in 2018, public policy to help neighborhoods like the third one, just one, but an actual something that could be implemented, what would you do given the choice? One thing.
We would revise the financial policy ordinance, which has expired and is due to go back before city council. And we would include in that ordinance some language to strengthen local hiring, to strengthen language about using those development deals to provide training, to provide living wages, and also to provide affordable housing units in the deals in which the city is putting forth. And also that puts in a process that accounts for a public hearing so that communities and neighborhoods can know what's happening with these deals, so we don't have the White Oak Music Hall disaster happening ever again. The community should have come out, they should have known what that event hall was gonna be, they should have signed off on it, so that when the neighbors said, we don't like this loud noise, say, we voted on this, you weren't at the meetings, we engaged you, and we support the music hall being here because it's an economic engine for this neighborhood, and it's a benefit to have a beautiful amenity where your children can go. That disaster should have never happened. And if one ordinance, is a financial policy ordinance. It's a short list of things that we can do, which says when the city does a deal, it gets something out of it. Imagine that. When the city gives a couple $1 million, it gets some affordable housing units. Imagine that. When the city gives a couple $1 million, it gets some jobs for unemployed
Living
residents.
wages.
That's right, in the neighborhood where that development is happening or proximate to that. The city drives the economic engines of the city. Imagine that.
We're working on all this things. We've
It's
got
like something,
recommendations from the mayor's task force. So the city subsidized the White Oak Music Hall, provided money for infrastructure, and in return, we could have been given this opportunity for a community meeting, could have required a certain amount of living wages, could have required the contractors were within a geographic area, so it would help people live, work, and play in an area that we're subsidizing. We subsidized 30 different hotels in the last decade, that have helped create the housing units for these conventions, but we need to create living wages from those jobs, not just $8 an hour made jobs.
We got to get the most out of our very scarce public dollars. We don't have a lot of them. So when we give them away and we share them, we have to make sure that people take those dollars and reinvest them in the very communities and the people that we care about and we serve. And the White Oak part, the other part is this, I think that's a great event center. And I think it's tragic, all of the controversy in that they're going to court. And think about this, if you want to create an event center in a nice neighborhood and you see what happened to White Oak, are you going to want to do that again? No. So that should have went through great due diligence so that the community was its greatest, grandest advocates, right? And so when you have those neighbors, so in our neighborhood, people move near Emancipation Avenue where all the bars and nightclubs are. I don't know why they do it. They saw it when they came into the neighborhood, but they do it and then they want to go down to City Hall and say, we want a noise ordinance of this. And I fight against them. I say, you knew this when you moved here. My job is to fend the businesses who make their living on this avenue. They were here. You could have joined the Civicals Club. You knew this. Don't buy a house proximate to a nightclub if you don't want that. I do it because I like listening. It don't bother me. But if it bothers you, don't move there, right? And so that's what I'm saying about these. So we think that if we have these public hearings, we're going to not get the deal. No, we're going to get the advocates and the buy-in that's necessary to then support that business and that amenities and those investments in our neighborhood. That's why we want public hearings, so the White Oak can get all of the advocates that it needs. So when the neighbors say, my children can't sleep at night, well, the problem is you knew this and we signed off on this, and this works for our community. So that's why we want to have an engagement public policy that brings us all on board. Financial policy ordinance before the city of Houston in 2008.
Nancy, the first round of letters went out around 2000 where the cities determined those houses cannot be rebuilt. It's just the first round of letters that are going out. We've been hesitant from the very beginning of people being in a hurry to rebuild their house. Don't want to be insensitive to the people who cannot, I mean, it's a financial decision. You're displaced, you're living in your temporary housing, you're having to pay for both, and all of a sudden the city's going to say, now you can no longer rebuild this house. And it's going to impact, it's equitably distributed around all council districts across the whole city, and we're going to see more and more of it. We've tried very hard to tell people, don't get in such a hurry, that it's irresponsible as a city public policy to let people flood and flood and flood. It's irresponsible use of our tax dollars, and it's not safe for them. We have a responsibility to ensure the safety of our citizens. But it's going to be controversial because how do we compensate the people who've now lost the ability to remodel their home there? I mean, do you see this being as an issue, especially in the poor neighborhoods? You know, the wealthy neighborhoods are going to sell their lot and you're going to build a big house above that. But in many of those neighborhoods, that's not what's going to happen.
Yeah, people are just gonna walk away, I think.
Right. It's the limiting foreclosure areas of those neighborhoods which leads to the downfall of those particular neighborhoods, especially in the 1 to 3 year time frame, right?
Right, exactly, yeah, there will be the foreclosure neighborhoods of Harvey, or however we'll refer to them. You know, whole neighborhoods that turned over and where people just left. And I see what you're saying about telling people, you know, just wait, just hold off, see what happens. But I'm also hearing people say, get that permit right away, because they don't want to have to tear down and rebuild, or they can't afford to do that, even with flood insurance. So people, you know, and it's so easy, because I work with someone who is going through this, and it's so easy to talk about it and to think like, okay, we've got to do the right thing here. And if this house is flooded 3 times in 3 years, and you know, the flood insurance policies have paid $1 million to this
For their $200,000 house.
That's not responsible. That's affecting all of the taxpayers. And,
Right.
but when you're in it, and this is your home, and this is all you have, or this is what you know, and you don't want to move, and you have the opportunity to rebuild, you know,
They're just taking the chances again.
I mean, I feel for those people, because it's, you know, it's their homes, and the other thing is in these investors, and I wonder what their motives are in buying these.
They weren't the people or the neighborhoods.
Sorry?
They weren't those people or those neighborhoods.
Right,
That's right.
right.
And I think that, Bill, that's one of the problems with this unregulated development environment that we have. We are encouraging people to exploit people by not putting in these protections, right? Because the investor's job is to come here, buy the property, buy the investment property, get the greatest benefit out of it, and move on to the next opportunity. We have to put in protections so that people are not being vulnerable to those kind of tactics. And so for people who don't understand that they're moving into a city that does flood, that does have flooding issues, right? When I bought my house, I didn't ask that question, does this neighborhood flood? You know, I didn't think that, right? I mean, I had some lived knowledge, but I'm a new homeowner. I don't know, I'm just happy for it's not flooded right now, right? And so we're being able to have some protections in the city because it's not sustainable. And I think that this is a challenge. Individuals' rights do not supersede the collective good. And this is what we're going to have to struggle with, right? As attached as you are to that place, it is not in the best interest of the city, the neighborhood, the community, for this property to be, for people to be allowed to have residence on this property. And those are hard decisions we have to make, but we have to make them now, because eventually we're going to have to make them. And I just have to say we have to make them.
Can I interject for a second and give a slight counterpoint? That there's a balance between, you mentioned no zoning. And I'll tell you, my job has been studying the city for the last 15 years. I have the PhD in Houston data. I have the PhD in Houston voices. We have interviewed literally thousands of people. We don't script anything that we do. We've been 100% authentic. And I will tell you that there's a balance between what you think of as zoning and the strict rules and the opportunity that no zoning brought many of those immigrants moving into Houston. The reason why Terrence O'Neill got to live in the near north side, and the art guys got to build their compound, with pine trees, but viewing, a stone's throw for the city, and they didn't have all the money, is because of no zoning. So it's how do we strike that balance between protections and regulatory process and the betterment of the
It's called a
infrastructure?
seatbelt law, and it did not kill the world in order to require them to wear a seatbelt. And so we're not talking over-regulation, we're talking about common sense regulation in the public safety, much like requiring a permit to replace your water heater is in the public's best interest, not because we want their $45.
Well,
And so I think that there's a balance.
there's a balance
I
between.
mean, I'm all for development, I make a
Right.
living on
That's
that
right.
development, but there can be responsible, aggressive development.
And that's what you have to do, because when you say no more no zoning,
No,
There-
we're never
there-
gonna be a zone city.
there-
We just should accept that.
that has created a lot of opportunity.
Sure it does, and rapid transformation.
Rapid.
So let me just ask the question of these homeowners on the panel. Danielle, do you have flood insurance?
I do not have one.
Let me recommend you
Let's
get
talk
flood
about
insurance for
So,
$417.
what's really
to
funny
protect
is
your
that
contents in your garage. and
Right
your-
after Harvey, I was like, I don't know if I want to live for a home anymore. And so I literally went to, and I had the privilege of working at City Hall with Steve Costello, but I literally went to our flood czar and was like, I need to talk about neighborhoods. And so he's like, yes, I need you to send me all of the addresses that you're looking at. And so it was wonderful that he himself went through and was like, you are in no floodplains and you are in no, so
No flood insurance.
I know.
Assata, flood insurance?
Yes.
Thank you. Nancy, do you have flood insurance?
As of about a month ago.
There you go.
Thank you.
Holly, you have flood insurance?
Absolutely.
Danielle, you're not looking for flood insurance. You have cars, you have a garage, you might be stuck there 17 days, your street might flood in the future. Okay, let's open it up just for a few questions. If you have questions for specific stars.
First, I'd like to say I love that you live in a 900 square foot house.
I know.
I think it's so great, and I think that the only way we're going to have a sustainable future is if people are living smaller. And working with a lot of millennials, I see that they want a smaller space. They don't want a huge space, and they want a little bit of yard, and they want it to be beautiful, and they want it to be authentic. And so I'm just wondering, are you working with any, with builders and any work that is giving them some kind of city incentive to build smaller, but not just up, because people don't want to pay all those HOA fees. They want something small but unique and
You can buy those shotgun houses in her neighborhood for $50,000, $70,000. They're out
Building
there.
sent an email to us.
They're out there.
Yeah. And we also working with Danny Samuels. He's an architect at Rice University, and he has a workshop. And Danny Samuels has actually done a lot of rehab and new builds on what we would consider micro housing or tiny houses, right? And so the concept and the idea is to be able to create a design product that is attractive to people. And so we're doing that in the Historic Third Ward. We have a number of sites that we are now moving to the development phase on to create and really market the micro houses or the tiny houses in terms of the row house. And I think the challenge is, it's just like in Houston. The challenge is if you don't have a car, you're seen as less than, right? And I even heard this, even if you're not a homeowner, you're seen as less than. It's like a second class status because we associate the size to really success, right? So if you can afford it, why would you get a big house, right? In some sort of way, we've got to do a value to shared spaces. I live in a neighborhood with the first public park in the state of Texas. That's called Emancipation Park. the first public park in the state of Texas. I don't need much green space when I have that big park, right? I don't need an exercise room when I can walk to an exhibition park and exercise, right? So being able to really create a culture where we value shared spaces and the use of those shared spaces, and we're hoping to do that with Danny Samuels, and then we're going to do a design book for builders so that they don't have to incur all the costs to be able to duplicate those structures in our neighborhood and be able to promote. And there's some great investors here that say, yeah, I love these row houses, I'm going to rehab them, you know, and then I'm going to sell them as rehab properties because I can really make a lot of money off of that, but I can also support this neighborhood's effort for historic preservation. Bill said my top policy. The other is a conservation district that we want to pilot in the historic third ward because we have a lot of buy-in to want it to be part of that, and we're willing to give up some of our rights, you know, for development around that if we can have some protections from the city to support conservation of the neighborhood. And the row houses, micro houses are a part of that.
Marissa?
Okay, I'm a millennial, and I don't live in a tiny house. I live in a 3,500 square foot house. It's huge, and I live in the suburbs. And we do also like walkability. There's a lot of master plan communities where the schools are within the neighborhood, so you can have the mom walk their kids to school. The strangest thing to me moving to Houston from LA was there's no sidewalks. I ran every single day when I lived back home, every day. And Houston does not have sidewalks. I was like, I'm going to get run over. What do you mean you guys have positions? So, also, culture, when you talk about millennials, I have a big house because of my culture, because us Mexicans love to have family over. So I need the space so that all my family comes home from LA, they all have somewhere to sleep. Sometimes it's on an air mattress, but that's another thing about culture. The Hispanic community, we don't move out till a very long time. So you get married. My first apartment, my dad said, I'm not moving you. You cannot leave me. And I was already in real estate. I said, Dad, I am selling homes and I live at home. That is not domestic violence. So he did not move me to my apartment. So that's another thing about culture and millennials. Millennials that are in the Hispanic community will not move until parents is a big thing. Until parents say, they give you your blessing or whatever it is, or you're living down the street from them and they can come over and check on you all the time. So, because it's happened to me. So that's another thing about culture when we talk about millennials. You know, there are, you know, jet setters that are like me that decide to move out, you know, way before their parents agree to it. And out in the suburbs, it's not all that horrible out there. The drive is sometimes a little bad, but like I'm very blessed where I don't have set hours at our office where I can come and go. And so maybe for some people, the suburbs will be an opportunity because we do have that walkability in a lot of the newer neighborhoods where the moms walk their kids to school, where the dads can walk them to the park. We have all of that.
Well, my love collaborator lives in Sugar Land, and I really value that road trip out there and being out there in Sugar Land. So I think there is an option. I think the point is we need choice. And that's all we're saying. They're going to be the people who are going to, and if you were my sister, I would come and sleep at your house. But I don't need 3,500 square foot. If you have 3,500, we all don't need it. Everybody, we can have one family house and you can have that one. So I'm saying we need choices, and we really need to open up the conversation that success is not tied to how many square feet that I have, right? For me, I'm a successful person. Bill invited me here, right? And I still just have that little tiny house, and I'm very successful. I'm very hardworking. I've achieved a lot, and my success is not tied to how big my house is, or if I have my own car and I don't share a car with someone else. So I'm saying that's really for millennials.
My mom does not drive. She didn't drive when we lived in California. We walked everywhere, or took the metro, or took the train, which I moved to Houston, and that was not a possibility.
You know,
Definitely not one size fits all.
you brought up something about sidewalks, and I've heard sidewalks mentioned a few times. That was the first thing that my husband in Timber Grove, he said, look, I want sidewalks. I never really thought about sidewalk or non-sidewalk, but I've realized that sidewalks are amenities that are not as common. Growing up in the suburbs, we all have sidewalks.
And they need to be tied to developers. The idea that developing that is an investment into the community. If you're bringing in these units, we need to find a way to fund, because the reality is, Bill didn't mention this, just get ready, we cannot continue with this revenue cap. I'll say it so Bill won't have to feel like he has to say it. I'll say this, we can't. You can't have all this growth and not be able to capture this growth, and that's why you have these TERS, because they capture these dollars. So the dollars get captured, they just don't sit in the city. And if you want the city, because the most painful thing was to watch residents go up before city council and say, why did you open the dams and flood my house? And Mayor Sylvester Turner said, it was not the city of Houston. We hold the city of Houston responsible for a lot, but they do not have the resources that they need to make the city the quality we want it. And that's a hard conversation to have. We don't have sidewalks because we don't have the public works dollars and the dollars to invest in the infrastructure. You can't have it both ways.
Right. And with, I was like, Holly can easily talk about the coming growth. You all probably know about the projected growth, but like, we're never gonna have the dollars for the sidewalks, but people keep coming, we've gotta get water to them before we talk about sidewalks. And just, I appreciated the millennial love for suburbs, because I do think what suburbs do well is begin with things like trails to parks and sidewalks for biking.
My neighborhood does not have sidewalks, it's a very small neighborhood, but a lot of the newer neighborhoods, even at the high school that I went to here, did not have sidewalks. So I was like, how do I walk home? Oh, you don't.
Careful.
Bus or your parents.
Kelly, you have one last question?
Well, yeah, about the tiny houses and the land values. How do you stay in place in Houston when the land value where you're 900 square foot
You
house?
go to cheaper land.
So
And
you can't stay in place.
are still $6 and $8 a foot lots.
Yeah, and there's also, we are working with the mayor to provide some protections for this issue, because it is an issue so it puts pressure on existing residents in the neighborhood when these townhouses come up, right? And they create this increase in value, which is disproportionate to everything that's happened the 5 years prior to that, right? So the city can, neighborhood by neighborhood, give some protections to those homeowners. And then and the city's gonna do this, so I'm just putting things out there. So there's something else that Austin did called the Community Land Trust. So the city is looking to that, because we've got to go to some new models to protect affordability and to protect existing residents. That's a case where the land can be owned by this public entity, but the house can be owned by the individual so that they can stay in place. So we've got to be innovative, and we've got to be willing to look at some different ways to manage the development and growth that's happening. And I want to say to the zoning, when nobody was wanting to come in, not having no zoning was great. Now that we are a grown up city, right? You know how your parents say, you're grown now, I need you to do things differently, right? We need to make budgets. We need to do some planning. We need to act like we're a big grown up city and manage our resources and our growth in a way that shows that we have the maturity to move into the next phase of our life as a city.
Holly has another video we're going to kind of end this presentation with. It's about a minute long, so let's see where this one goes.
So this is augmented reality. Very hyper-local. We're talking about neighborhoods. Now we're bringing the idea of technology. Houston's the first city to launch this. That pairs hyper, just like the Chronicle purchased Houston community newspapers, hyper-local is the new norm. So the way to bring your community to you, your technology, is augmented reality. We talk a lot about Third Ward, Emancipation Park. A great way for a visitor, a new resident, an interested resident to find out a little bit more about the history would be to download the app, hold it up, and a natural data layer shows you everything you need to know about Emancipation Park. Think about it as digital wayfinding for the millennium, if you will, not necessarily just for millennials. So that's something that we launched 3 months ago. We're going through the second phase of integration with Uber and Lyft and Open Table soon. And then we're going to be working with several of the master plan communities and civic communities to bring in their data layers as well, so we can get very granular.
And Holly, how many cities in the United States have augmented reality apps?
None.
That's been fun.
None. Start.
Well, on behalf of Boulevard, really, I want to thank each of the 4 of you for being here, making time out of your very busy schedule to kind of set the tone for 2018. Houston is this amazing place filled with amazing people.
Yes.
That's what makes it great, who are doing great things for other people in our city. And I want to thank you for being a part of our panel today and being part of our kickoff for the new year. We're very optimistic about Houston and what we can do to make each of our neighborhoods the best that they can be. So thank you so much.
I have one thing to say. I just want to thank Bill. Bill is a great steward, and he embodies the spirit of Houston. He gives a lot of his time. I want to thank you personally for supporting a Harvey-related fundraiser for a church who was flooded and didn't have flood insurance. And so I just want to tell you that you really do have a treasure in Bill, and we are fortunate as a city to have you here because you make us a better city, and you give of yourself in ways that really helps this city be the best city it can be. So thank you, Bill.
Yeah.
That really concludes all that I have. Yes, Cynthia?
I just wanted to say, thank you for putting this together. This is amazing. Thank y'all for coming. Having worked for years at John Darden and Martha Turner before I came here, this quality of information here today is, I've never got that there. And girlfriend, Danielle, please, here's my public service announcement. I give all my buyers, you're not in a flood zone. It's going to be more crazy that you don't have flood insurance.
Guys, I've been shamed. Been shamed into it.
Really, insurance is such a racket.